Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about the 6 books that I read in January. So January I think was a pretty good reading month for me. 6 books is like pretty average. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more. But I do feel good about 6 books. Today is technically the 30th, so I could technically finish another book, but I don't think that I will because my current reads are kind of long and I'm not very far into them. Let's just talk about what I read. The first book I read this year was 1984 by George Orwell. I gave this book 4 stars. 1984 follows a man named Winston Smith who works for the government, and the government surveils everything. They know everything that you do. They are constantly watching and listening and constantly changing history, changing basically anything that they want. They're in complete control. And it's about his kind of journey through discovering that maybe he doesn't want the government to be in complete control, and what that means for him and what they'll do to him because of that. This book is, of course, a classic, and for good reason. It has really wonderful, well, maybe wonderful is not a great word. It has very important messaging. It talks a lot about your rights as a person, about government control and government manipulation. Those are always things I think to just be aware of, be knowledgeable about. That's how you keep your brain free. But of course I think there's always great things to learn. George Orwell is a fantastic author. I love the way he writes. I think he crafts a really wonderful narrative that is relatable and also you learn something from. So that was the first book I read, was 1984 by George Orwell. The next book that I read was The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Keist. I unfortunately only gave this book 3 stars. In this book you are following an investigation into an area called the Velkwood vicinity. Basically it is a street in a suburb that has just kind of disappeared. It's become a ghost. Like, you can still kind of see it, but there's a barrier around it. It doesn't allow anybody in, and it's a big mystery. Nobody knows, what's happening. The government is, trying to investigate it, and then eventually gave up because nobody could figure it out. And then you're following one of the girls who is a main character who survived, I guess, got out of the town, and it's 20 years later. It's her and her 2 best friends who got out, and she's going to solve the mystery. I think this book had important messaging. I don't want to spoil it. I'm trying to figure out how to say this without spoiling it. I think the book knew what it was trying to get at, and it did, but I think that the way that it was done made the bad, villainous things seem almost cartoonish. Like, it was almost like a caricature of the thing that's happening, the bad thing that's happening. I think it took away from the point that it was trying to make because it was so caricaturized. I think overall it was an interesting read. I didn't really like the main character very much, which I don't think you have to like a main character to enjoy a book or for a book to say important things, but it does play a factor in like the overall enjoyment of a book, and it was hard for me to understand where the character was coming from. I also tend to not... There's a fine line between like foreshadowing and just being like, they'll never know what the truth is, but I know what the truth is and I'm holding it back because plot, and they don't know what is really happening and what our secret is, and I find that really grating in books. That's something that really turns me off in like thriller. It happens a lot in thrillers where it's like, but they don't know what the real secret is that I know. And it's just like, it just makes it annoying to me when like clearly the main character knows what's happening, but it's being held back like as plot armor. And I'm like, we can create suspense and mystery in other ways. I don't know, that really bugs me. So that book kind of fell into this a little bit, where it's just like the main character is constantly thinking stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, let's get to the point. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what made me not enjoy this book as much. The next book that I read was The Other Side of Night by Adam Hamdy. I gave this book 4.75 stars. It was not quite a 5-star for me, but it was really close. I really enjoyed this book. In this book, you are following a young man named Elliot who has tragically lost his mother to cancer and his father to an alleged suicide. You are following a detective who is trying to clear her name after she has been falsely accused of harming somebody. And then you are following a man that she used to date, who broke up with her suddenly, who is a surrogate father to the child, Elliot. And she's trying to figure out what happened, if his father really did commit suicide, if somehow the man that she used to date is involved, if he could have murdered them. And it is kind of a murder mystery. It's a lot more literary, I think I would say, than like a traditional murder mystery. And really the murder mystery is like it is the plot, but it's not the plot, if you know what I mean. And this book gets really strange and speculative, and that's something that I always absolutely love. I think that it was done really, really well. I had no idea what was going on, and the ending really brought it home for me, and I think really nailed the nail on the head. Hit the nail on the head. That's what I'm trying to say. I think that it was really well written, and I really enjoyed there's some science-y aspects in this book that I really enjoyed. Like, I think you could almost characterize it as sci-fi a little bit even. So it's kind of like a combination of like sci-fi, literary, murder mystery, all tied into one. And I thought that it was beautifully done. The next book that I read was Relics of Ruin by Erin M. Evans. This is the second book in the series. The first one is called Empire of Exiles. This is kind of hard to explain. Basically, you are following a kid named Quill. I guess he's like a teenager, named Quill, who used to be a scribe and has now joined the Imperial Archives. You're following archivists. They're trying to solve a mystery about a relic has been taken from the archives, and they're trying to figure out how that happened, what that means, who is involved. In the first book, there's a lot of political conspiracies, so you find even more out about that in this one. It's kind of hard for me to tell you a ton about it without spoiling the first one, but basically it's like you're continuing in the first one with a lot of the plot, but then there's also kind of this new mystery that's happening. I really enjoy these books. I gave this one 4 stars. I gave the first one 4 stars as well. I will say, like, the middle-ish section was kind of dragging for me a little bit, and I was like, oh no, am I not gonna like this one very much? And then crazy things started happening and it really picked up, and so then I was like, oh, okay, I see what's happening now. So yeah, I really enjoy these ones. I think these covers are like not necessarily a great indication of what the books are like, and I'm not trying to be mean to the cover designer because just because I don't like the covers very much doesn't mean that it's not a good design. But I could see people looking at this and being like, that doesn't sound that interesting just by looking at the cover. But these books are really, really good. So you should check them out even if you're unsure about the cover like I was. But I do think they're great. They're very interesting. The world building is really cool in this. There's like very interesting magical things. Very interesting politics. So yeah, those Relics of Ruin. The next book that I read was Over the Woodward Wall by A. Deborah Baker, which is a pen name for Shauna Maguire. I gave this one 3 stars. I didn't really like it very much. Honestly, is 3 stars too much? It might be. It might be. This book is, you're following these 2 kids. They live across the street from each other, but they're in separate worlds. They're very different. The girl is very free-flowing and she likes to play in the dirt and she has crazy hair and her parents are artists and they let her flip-flop and do whatever they want, whatever. And then the boy is very straight-laced and he likes to have his shirt pressed and his shoes shiny and his parents are like lawyers and, you know, that vibe. And basically they're walking to school one day and there's a giant wall. So they climb over it and they get transported into another world. I really like the premise of this book, but it was just a little too cliche, and I am kind of confused on if this book is like a middle grade or not. I think the consensus is that it is a middle grade book. It drives me crazy when adults read middle grade or children's and then they're like, it wasn't realistic enough. I had to suspend my disbelief too much. Stuff like that, because I'm like, well, you're reading a children's book. So that's on you. So that's not why I didn't like it. And I read plenty of middle grade. I've reread a lot of middle grade from my own childhood and things. And middle grade can be done in a very good way. And I'm not saying this is like done in a horrible way. For me, I think it was too cliche. And the biggest problem that I had with this book was that it feels like I read the first quarter of a book and then it just ends. Like it ends very, very abruptly, like right when you start to get to like any sort of action. And so it was kind of a sludge to get through. I think the writing was pretty, but I don't know. I just think maybe Seanan McGuire isn't for me because I tried to read, what are those books called? The Wayward Children series. The first one is Every Heart a Doorway. She wrote that series. A lot of people love it. They're like novellas, I think. And I just didn't like that either. I DNF'd it. So maybe it's that I just don't jive with Seanan McGuire. And that's okay. That's okay to happen. It's okay to not like an artist or an author and just like not click with the stuff that they're making. So yeah, that was kind of a bummer for me because I was actually really looking forward to that. I enjoy whimsical reads. But this was just a little too unstructured for me, I think. The last book that I read was Artificial Condition by Martha Wells. This is the second book in the Murderbot series. I gave it a 4-star. Basically, the Murderbot series follows a murderbot. Basically, they're like a security unit robot, and their purpose is to act as like security. That's why they call them like murderbots, because if they need to like kill in their protection, they will. And they have hacked into their like mainframe so they don't have to follow orders. And basically this robot is just like kind of depressed, kind of wants to just like watch TV and not do anything, but they have to follow their duties so that people don't realize that they've hacked into themselves, or they would just get like shut down, because it's very dangerous for a murder bot to hack into itself because it could kill everybody. And then this is the second book, and it's following them just trying to figure out kind of like who they are and what to do now that they're free. And so I found it very interesting. I think there's like a cool mystery undertone in this one, and in this one they interact with another bot that's like a ship, and I found those interactions really funny, just like two robots talking to each other, the one being like really annoyed by the other, and I just thought that the banter was really well written. These are little novellas, they're very short, but I think that Martha Wells does a great job of having a full story arc while still leaving it open to like what's going to happen next, because this is a whole series. I think there's like 5 or 6 books now. It feels complete and the character work feels complete while it's still being a short story. So that was the last book that I read. They're really fast. I like the murder books because they're really fast to read, and I'm looking forward to reading the next one. So yeah, let me know if you've read any of these books, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Maybe you loved Over the Woodward Wall. Let me know. Let me know what was your favorite and least favorite book that you read in January. Very curious about that. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye!